they absolutely love and adore and sell like anybody's business across the world. Once again, I'm going to ask you another question. See if you can think of those 5 as I go through them. And some of them are quite obvious and some of them are not. So the first one, which is a bit of a surprise to me, but if you wanted to write anything around romantic fiction, that sells. It's still the #1 bestseller throughout the world, which is a bit of a surprise. But the old Mills and Boon and those sort of like romantic novels and erotica as well, that sort of thing, that sells huge amounts of copy. It equates to about £1.6 billion worth of sales last year alone. So if that's something you're interested in writing and you think you can come up with something good, that's actually worth considering. The next one is crime and mystery. We all love crime fiction. I do. Inspector Montalbano, Morse, Agatha Christie, a whole range of things. If you're writing something within that sort of genre, you've got some chance of actually selling copies. In this country, we seem to be obsessed with detective fiction, and there's new series on all the time. J.K. Rowling, ironically, after having Harry Potter rejected by tons and tons of companies because they couldn't quite see where it fitted, obviously writes crime fiction now as well. Her Cormoran Shrike novels under the name of Galbraith sell really well. So that's a huge area as well in terms of thinking about writing. The next area to really think about is religious instruction, religious theory, inspirational work, self-help work. It's really interesting because if you think about religion, whether you're a Catholic or a Muslim or a Christian, whatever, people really like religious books and texts and inspirational self-help types of work. So if you're also in that vein, and you think about the Anthony Robbins of the world and the Stephen Covey's books about sort of self-help and 7 habits of successful people and motivation, those books do sell. So big publishers are usually interested in getting that type of book in front of an audience because they know invariably it does sell. So that's the third one. Hope you're with me on these and guessing some of them. The next one, science fiction. Science fiction books are historically have always been popular. Not my thing. I don't really read or write science fiction. I can get why people like it. The world of the imagination, what the future worlds may look like, etc. It's really strange. There were science fiction books written in the 1970s about a virus that would overtake the world and actually people would be suffering. And you look at what's happened over the past year or so, there were science fiction writers writing about these things late 60s, 1970s. So it shows you, it's interesting to think about that scenario and obviously predicting the future. So science fiction is the next one. The last one, which very young people always find horror novels to be really, really interesting, and they sell as well. The thing about horror novels, and obviously working in, theatre and film, is so many horror novels tend to make their way onto screen as well. So they work well. And what big publishing companies like doing, which they're clearly going to do, is obviously take that work and sell it to a film company or a TV company, the rights of it, so they make even more money doing that. So those are the sort of 5 main areas of bestsellers that if you know that your writing, your motivation is to write something, a bestseller within that, I think you're on a really, really good wicket in terms of actually, selling copies and getting a big publisher interested in you. There are 2 other genres that have developed over the past 15, 20 years beyond all recognition. And I think, as I say, I'll let you see if you can think of those. But the first one is the rise of the children's novel, or the re-emergence of it. Ever said that David Walliams sold 1.6 million copies of his books last year, which is staggering, which is more than J.K. Rowling sold with all of her Harry Potter books together last year, although over a period of time she's sold tons, obviously. But that market, that children's market, is huge. So big publishers are really interested in anything that's different, unique, and it seems to sell. And there is another genre which obviously means nothing to me, because I don't even know where the kitchen is in my house, but cookery, cooking books, recipes. It's amazing the market out there for, particularly if it's more niche and different types of cooking books from different continents and cultures, a huge market out there. So the reason I've started talking about these sort of bestsellers, and is if you're thinking of writing within those genres, you could be approaching big publishing houses like Schuster, Macmillan, Penguin, HarperCollins. There's a load of them there that will bite your hand off for a well-written book in one of those genres. And it's worth considering, because they can only say no, but if they know that they're selling thousands and millions of similar type books, there's a fair chance they've got a chance of selling your books. And that's what these big publishing companies are about. They are machines, commercial machines, to take product and sell. Why would you be approaching a big publisher? Well, it's quite obvious, because you think about the prestige of being attached to a big publishing house. They have a whole machinery behind them in terms of PR. They'll get you on the Eamon Holmes program and any morning, or any of those talk shows to talk about your books. They'll get you into the paper. They'll get you into bookshops. They'll get you wherever. They'll get you into book fairs. So, there's a huge advantage to it. For me, and this is just, as I say, and I should have said this right, this is just my opinion of the world. I think my view of publishing is right, and I can help you get your stuff out there. Don't worry about that. But for me, as a more creative type writer, the disadvantages are that you lose real creative control once you've submitted your work. Now, for some writers, you think, well, actually, if you're going to make me a millionaire, I'm not too bothered about that. I'll send you my book. You can do my cover. You can do the editing, you can do everything for me, you can change it whatever way, but you lose creative control. And this also sounds bizarre. You will sell copies with big publishers because that's what they do, but initially royalties are fairly low, very small. You need to sell a huge amount because their cut is very, very high. So, but yeah, if they're working for you and they're getting their machine in process for you, they will sell thousands of copies of your book. So that's the bestseller, okay? So let's say that you've sent your book to publishers and have said, well, not really for us, we don't think it's there. The second model, which a lot of writers are involved in, I've been involved in it certainly over the last some years, something called hybrid publishing. Now, hybrid publishing is a halfway house between standard publishing and your self-publishing. How it works is this, and Olympia are a really good example of this. Pegasus are very good, Novan Publishing. As I say, I'll talk individually to people after if you want to sort of pursue these things afterwards. But how it works is this, you submit your work to them. These publishing houses may well take a chance, a risk on publishing your work and want to work with you. So if it's one of those categories before, that's fine. If it's something a bit more artistic, creative, that is a bit different, they'll also consider that and take an opportunity to work with you. The big difference, and cutting to the chase on this, is that they will go halfway with you on this. So how it will work is they will say, well, it costs us around £24,000 to get your book from the stage of it being where it is now, through the editing, the proofreading, the actual printing of the copies, the marketing, the PR, to selling. It's quite an expensive business. So what they'll say is, we will offer you a package then, either a premium or a sort of bronze standard. It's usually between 9,000 at the high end to 4,000 at the bottom. But they'll say, I tell you what, if you actually go halfway with us, we will work with you to do your cover, we'll do the book for you, we'll actually do the PR side of it, we'll put your book out in terms of the wider world, we'll hopefully sell it for you, and but you will have to invest some money in it. Now, if you think about it, you think, well, £4,000 at the low, it's a lot of money, 9,000. yeah, it's expensive if you want the high end. They'll do a lot more for you the more you pay. They will come to payment arrangements with you if it's an issue about you forking that money up straight away. They do 1 year payment plans, etc., which equates to about, on the £9,000 one, it's about £400 a month, which is steep. On the 400 one, it's 4,000, it's about 150, 200 pounds. It varies. They'll come to some arrangement with you. The disadvantage of that is that if you don't have that money up front, you'll have to wait until it's paid before they publish your book. Clearly, they're not going to publish it without paid, but they do a decent job with it. And I know with Olympia, what they'll also say is that if you sell 750 copies, we will give you your money back. We will give you that money back, which is really good. Yeah. So it's something to think about, and they will put that machinery behind you. I like hybrid publishing in the sense of you still have the element of creative control. So you can actually work with them on the cover. You'll make sure that it is your text and it's not been bolderized or changed or radically edited, which I think the main publishers would, they will do all of that for you. So it is very much a partnership venture. And yeah, it's a bit of a leap into the dark, a leap of faith. You think, well, actually, is this going to work? But I do know for a number of writers, it's worked out really, really well in terms of them being able to make some money, sell some copies. And I do believe if there's quality in the work and it's something that people are interested in, then people will buy it. So that's hybrid publishing. And the reason, as I say, I mentioned that is because for a number of writers with something different, it's worth exploring that. Yeah. So I'll move on to the last one, and the most popular one really at the moment is the whole rise of self-publishing. Now, when I originally started with sort of, what do you want to write? Why are you writing? If you just want to get your work out there, let's say you've got your own social media presence, you could be a particular name in a particular field. I work with a large number of people in my day job who specialize in things like the care sector or domestic abuse, and they're well thought of, really important people doing great things, and they may just want to get their work out there in that space, or they want to actually put out pamphlets or leaflets. I, for instance, have done a number of essays on some musical writers that I like, that I've self-published, and they've done quite well, thank God, touch wood, and some of my short stories do quite. So and my plays in particular, it's so much easier for me to put them out on a self-publishing platform than to look at a major publisher to do that for me, because they wouldn't necessarily be in the market to want to publish those things anyway. They're more interested, as I say, in the bestsellers or books or whatever. So how does it work? Self-publishing is quite simple. There are different platforms like Kobo, etc., iBooks, ebooks, different ways of doing it. I used to work something Create Space, which was a platform that is now part of Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP. Now I'll talk about KDP because one, and as I say, but I like it. I like Kindle Direct Publishing. I like Amazon. Amazon is the biggest bookshop in the world, whether people like it or not. It's huge, it's vast. The art is knowing how to reach people and sell your copies, but it works fairly simply. So let's say you've been rejected by the main publisher. Even the hybrid publishers said, well, I'm not sure, but it's good, but not for us. And self-publishing might be your only option you're left with. You register on KDP, fairly simple process, and you can set up your own publishing portal, which once again is fairly easy to manage. It gives you strict guidelines in terms of what your manuscript should look like in terms of font size, usually Arial 12. It talks about what you can do and what you can't do. It will help you and support you producing your own cover for your book as well. It will go through all of those details. And in terms of pricing as well, you're able to set your own price and your profit margin on it. The thing about self-publishing is you can do well in self-publishing. It's very difficult to actually have a bestseller actually on a self-publishing portal like KDP, unless you are willing to, because remember with this, you don't have that publishing company behind you to support you with your marketing and with your PR, etc. You don't have any of that. So unless you maybe invest yourself in a bit of marketing, you may want to set up your own website. You may want to look at maybe paying a consultant, a marketing consultant or a company to do some work for you. And that might be just a short campaign to get your work out there, because often it's easier said than done. But someone who's an expert at getting your books out into book publications or local newspapers or national papers or adverts, you know, it may be worth your while doing that, because once you start selling books and the word goes round, then often that may well attract interest from publishing houses as well, where they'll pick up on something and say, well, actually, that seems to be doing really well and seems to be popular. So that's sort of, not only it's generating sales for you, but it's also getting the interest from other publishing houses. But yeah, the biggest disadvantage of it, you'll struggle to get into the bookshops with this. People can get hard copies of your work, they can get paperbacks of your work online or whatever, but you will struggle to get the work really out there unless you've got that machine behind you. But the positive thing that I want to say around this, and as I say, having experienced all of those forms of publishing over a number of years, you can get your work out there if you're determined enough to do it. And I think Rhoda made the point initially, actually, we're going to talk about this a bit later, of being determined, not being, the fear of failure and the fear of what people think often holds us back from doing things. And we all suffer from that. We can all be as confident, you know, on paper and talking to people, but we all go through that where we think, well, actually, I really do care what people think. And if they think it's a load of rubbish, how am I going to react? Or if publishing companies reject my work, does it mean it's worthless? I believe in the sanctity of art and people's ability to express themselves and do so in whatever way you can. I also don't believe in the world of literary critics and people just being criticizing people for the sake of it. Most literary critics, remember, are failed artists in one way or another that actually probably don't have the artistic integrity or skill to get their own work out there, so actually find great gratification in being able to slaughter people if they can. So you take that with a pinch of salt, but it is, as I say, it's absolutely doable. And I do think, as I say, in this day and age, I think everyone's got their story to tell. And I do think this self-publishing, in a way, you think of the emergence of blogs as well, about the whole notion of people being able to share their feelings, share their thoughts. I think it's great the way social media is working. But as I say, what I'm trying to guide you and help you is to think, well, actually, you can get your book formally published in one way or another. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with self-publishing. You can get it out and sell your copies. And you can, with a bit of luck, make a career for yourselves in terms of publishing. So it's a whole minefield. And as I say, it's not easy, but that gives you a sort of whistle-stop tour on sort of the whole world of publishing, really, and how that works. So what I'm happy to do, because I'm conscious at the moment that you're probably thinking, well, actually, I have got a few ideas. Note those ideas down, or things you'd like to do. And I'm quite happy to have different conversations or separate conversations, because I know a few of you have actually emailed me separately and said, actually, Tony, I am interested in getting a book out or doing something. So hopefully that's been really, really useful in terms of giving you a guide as to what you can do, because I am someone that actually has worked through all of that myself over a period of years, so I know how it works. So that's publishing for you. And I'm going to move on to Rhoda. Shall I move on to theatre? You're on mute, Rhoda.
We got Dr. Rebecca with us, and I don't think we have her for long, so we may just need to jump to her.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no problem.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So we're just going to, I've got a picture of you here. This is, so you might, let me unmute you. You might need to unmute yourself, Dr. Rebecca. So Dr. Rebecca was going to come on after we've done the publishing, after we've done the artwork and the short story and the world of theatre. Because we've only got her for a very limited time, it's important that we'll perhaps get her now on to talk to us. So Dr. Rebecca Louisa, welcome. Thank you for joining us all the way from Mexico.
Yeah. Good morning. It's lovely and warm here at 8:30 in the morning at 24 degrees. It's going to be a hot one.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well done, and thank you for joining us. One of the reasons we wanted you to talk to us is obviously we're talking about short stories, but also how short stories can become short films, and perhaps just talk to people the process they can take, and just a little bit more about yourself as well, because you're a doctor and you do film festival.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And really nice to meet you all. So as Rhoda said, I'm indeed the Film Festival Doctor. That's in my company. I'm a doctor of film, and I got my PhD in 2010. But then I realized halfway through doing the PhD that that wasn't what I wanted to do for my career. I didn't want to be in the world of academia. What I wanted to do instead was work in the world of film festival distribution, because I found there was a gap in the market during the time that I was producing a film festival whilst I was a student, and that there was nobody offering a service to filmmakers at that time, certainly wasn't many, to help them get their films seen in festivals and create the right strategy for them and to get it into the right festivals. So that all had a massive career change after what I thought what I was supposed to do was to be in the world of academia actually wasn't what I wanted to do. It was actually working in the film industry. So 10 years later, where we are now, the company's going strong. We've helped our clients win almost 1,000 awards and 1 Oscar nomination. So we're very, very excited.
Wow.
Yeah. So I love what I do. It's like literally, I live and breathe it. It is my, what I'm supposed to be doing, my sole purpose. And I love, love working with all sorts of films, and especially short films as well. Short films are brilliant to work with. And like you said, Rhoda, yes, short stories in the form of a short story in a book or in a magazine or whatever it's going to be, it can translate also to the short film content, the short film form. But it's quite a different process, because obviously, for one thing, it's writing a screenplay. So obviously when you're writing a short story, that's a story, as Tony was saying. But when it comes to a short film, it's very important that you know how to write a script and to write dialogue that is very strong. Because when it comes to the world of film festivals are looking for really innovative short films. And it all starts with the script and the story. The story needs to have an edge to it, be original, be different, be something that you don't normally see, and something that isn't, say, mainstream and formulaic. Something that is rather more of an edge to it, takes a risk, it's daring, it's not full of cliches. That's what film festivals look for a short film. So that's why it's important that your script is very what we call on point, and is really, really focused and really, laser focused, and there's no bad dialogue, and it's got, really interesting story, something that's fresh and original. So to translate that from a short story to a script, it's going to need someone that can help you write really good dialogue. Having boring dialogue will not get into many festivals, and maybe not any massive ones. So that's what you have to be careful of with the short film world, first of all. It's really got to make sure you can transition from the short story to the screenplay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Questions on that at the moment?
We've actually said to people not to ask questions just because of the time, but because we don't have you for long, if it's okay, has anybody got any questions? They can put it on the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Is it possible? Can I ask a question, Rebecca? Because obviously, I heard you recently talking about films being made during lockdown, actually, which was really interesting. I caught up on you on an Instagram meeting, I think, with someone from the South Bank film. Yes. So it would be interesting to get your view on, the kind of short films that are emerging at the moment through lockdown and COVID, and are things sort of changing? And I know you're busy anyway, but be interesting to hear, because I heard you talk a little bit around this before.
Yes, really good point, actually. Since the pandemic began, that has also birthed a new category for film festivals called the COVID-19 pandemic short film category. And they've seen some really interesting films. So people have been obviously had more time on their hands during the first lockdown, maybe even now, but people want to still keep being creative. People are writing quite a lot, but they found ways they could film and shoot a film around the regulations and the rules and the lockdown kind of thing going on. So we had quite a few people approach us with films that were made during lockdown. And there were a few that were the same, you know, people dealing with mental health issues that were the same issues by themselves at home that weren't particularly very fresh. There were other films that were really innovative and went on to do really good festivals and win awards. The first one we worked on was shot in Birmingham, and it was actually from the point of view of a young boy and how he began to miss going to school and his routine and his friends and actually, you know, having the fun at school and how much he really enjoyed school. But it did it from his perspective. So it didn't really focus on the adults and the parents, just more him. And it was really interesting because it was a really good actor and it was not like too deep. It was, you know, quite a nice energy to it. It wasn't like a deep drama. It was more of a, you know, not a comedy, but a bit more lighthearted. But it had a really fresh take on seeing how, you know, children cope in the pandemic. And the other one was a documentary. It was profiling a woman who gave birth on the day the lockdown began and how her baby just saw their house for a couple of months until about June. And the whole thing is her, you know, with her routine, and it's done a voiceover of how she's coping and how the baby just doesn't understand what's going on. And it's really interesting. It's a very intimate portrait than being, you know, a little bit, say, fabricated. So there's been a lot of original things come up. There's also been a very funny comedy that came out, which I think was the most original. And we worked on it. It's a TV pilot, a TV show, sorry, called Flimsy. And it's all shot during lockdown, but it's actually made, it's not about the lockdown itself. It just happens to be shot during lockdown. And it was all filmed on a mobile phone in 13 different countries with around 10 different actors. And it's like a day in the life of this girl, but it's nothing to do with the pandemic. It's just a normal daily life, but shot around the pandemic. And also some scenes where it's two of them together, they've actually been shot separately in their homes, but they've been made to look like they're together. It was a very creative piece of work and the whole thing goes backwards. So it's very fresh, innovative, but also clever how they managed to pull it off, doing all of that ambitious project during the lockdown. So there's been some really creative stuff come out, and that's creative storytelling. You know, it all starts with a story. And that is the most important thing, as Tony was probably saying with his previous talk. It's all about that story and then how that gets executed. It is two big things, but it starts with a script, which is why your screenplay must be really well written. If you need help with that, then definitely get a mentor for that, or go on courses at Raindance, for example, that have Raindance have script courses in terms of how to write your first screenplay to get it where it needs to be, because that will be what guides you into getting into festivals. The more stronger it is and the more innovative it is.
I just wanted to echo that, Rebecca. That was really useful because as I write, you know, short stories and publish short stories myself, I also know you're exactly right that I can write them and I can have a particular view of the world and think they are, but they do need to be, you need to look at it through a different lens when you're actually producing them as a screenplay and a potential short film, because there's different dynamics to them. And obviously, as I say, you're writing something in a very structured way, and there really is a separate piece of work, isn't there, about making it a magical short film, even though it's a really good short story. And I think, you know, a lot of mine are, it's very difficult to then translate it into what would be a really good short film, isn't it?
Well, it is, exactly. And a lot of this, I think it comes back to kill your darlings is the word, I think, the phrase. Shorts that you don't need to have these extra scenes. It's not anything to the story. So you've got to be like really cutthroat, you know, and not all about, so it's a nice scene between them. Will it actually add anything to the narrative and develop the characters? Because you've got quite a task on your hand to, you know, do what, 10 or 15 minutes short. You can do a lot in that time, and you've got to make sure those characters are really well developed. If it's a drama, if it's a comedy, then it's got to make sure that it's funny, you know, and the timing's there and it doesn't miss a beat, you know. So these are all got their own challenges. But it is a case to be really, really tight. So we actually had a film come in yesterday to work on. So the actor who wrote the script, he did this like a, not a rehearsal, but, you know, like a demo reel for this scene he's going to do from a film. And then someone said, this actually can make a good short. And I saw it yesterday, and it was a really poignant piece where a man was about to kill himself, and the detective comes over, and it's a real good bond between them. And he wrote the screenplay, but it needs work because the dialogue's a little bit cliched, and it is actually not an interesting story. It's a very, very cliched. So we got to say, you know, for what it is, it can do smaller festivals, but it just needs now more depth between the two characters to really pull that off. Because on paper right now, it's very generic and it's not really going to do anything outstanding, but there is a nice bond between the two people you've set up. It's plenty to work on, but you have to really know exactly what you want from the film and the screenplay.
Can I just one more question, Rebecca? I would, because obviously I'm fascinated by short film. I tend to write flash fiction in terms of really short stories, and obviously it's a particular genre I'll talk about. And I think there does seem to be, and it limits in a way, and I know the way they work. There is very much a tight time duration for short films. You're talking about 15 minutes or whatever. Is there real flexibility around the time? Are there really short films? If you don't, in the same way there are short stories, is there scope for those, or are you sort of rigid in terms of what's been produced at the moment in terms of timing?
No, I mean, there are films that are around 5 minutes or a little bit less than that. But again, that all comes down to a really good script, because sometimes when you see films that are 5 minutes, those shorts, sometimes you think, I wish it was longer, because it just needs to add more to it. But you need to I want to know more about this, but it was 5 minutes. But it's a nice snapshot. But again, it's all about that kind of perfecting the characters. We have a film that is 6 minutes, and that could be longer, but it does what it needs to do, and it makes that emotional impact in that time, because it doesn't really hang around doing anything else and dragging things out. So it's really interesting. So no, it can be. It just goes down to making sure that the story is fleshed out to where it needs to be to make that impact and make that emotional punch. So a lot of the time with short films, with the dramatic shorts, a lot of them, but you need to make sure that you're going to really aim to get that kind of poignancy that you really want in the beginning. So it's really actually what a lot of people find when they write, my clients tell me, is that they really flesh out their characters before they actually write the screenplay and the words. So they start these kind of like character kind of breakdowns of what their personality is, what they do, and all this kind of thing. So that kind of stuff. And then they actually put pen to paper. Now they've got the characters in their head fleshed out and thoroughly done. They can actually put the words for them. It takes a bit of time, but I mean, that's the best way to do it. Having headaches when you're writing, like, I can't write this sentence. You've already written the characters, so it writes the sentences and the dialogue for you.
Dr. Rebecca, we have a question here. Someone wants to know, can you recommend a good mentor for writing screenplays? We have a great story that we're trying to make into a film.
Ooh, very nice. Yes, I would. In terms of writing screenplays, I really like the Raindance Film Institute, because they've got really good courses, which are for longer term screenplay courses or one-day intensive. But they actually have really good people who teach now. It's got really up in their game, and they have lots of them. You can do it online, and they're short courses, long courses. But they also have good connections there to people to develop in-house with you more screenplays, and they're really high-end festival. So if you go into online and go Raindance film courses on Google, it'll come up with the Raindance page. And I really recommend that, because it's a very supportive community. And when you become a member, or if you join one of their courses, you get access to their online community as well. Also, they don't do many courses, I don't think, but they might do now, but they do offer a kind of help in terms of finding mentors for writing screenplays and getting that part of the process done. It's a Liftoff film community. So if you type in Liftoff Film Festivals, you'll see their website. You can then click on the community and you can find out there how to join. It's a really, really cheap per year. It's nothing next to nothing, but they really help with that. And they give you lots of workshops, lots of one-to-ones. So those two are very supportive for first-time filmmakers.
Yeah, and Chichi has a question. Chichi, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, please. Hi, Dr. Rebecca. Thank you very much for attending today. I wanted to ask, you mentioned something about the kind of films that are in film festivals, and one of the most important factors is the dialogue. And I wanted to ask about that, because sometimes when you're watching these indie movies, especially the ones that do well in the film festivals, you can tell that there's just something about the movie. And sometimes it's not that anything exciting has happened. It could be a story about almost nothing, but it's just a brilliant movie. And part of that, the reason for part of that is the dialogue. So I just wanted to know, because it's easy to read a script and know this is a good script, but how do you capture that when actually writing? I know you mentioned fleshing out the characters, which is a good point or a good tip, but is there anything else you can say in terms of how to capture a really good dialogue when writing movies or screenplays?
It would be avoiding saying cliched dialogue. So saying things like, I wish it was you and not me, or something like that. Like really stuff we hear in soap operas, to move away from that. And to instead to have very authentic conversations that really break the mold. If you watch a soap opera like EastEnders or something, that will be, every day-to-day dialogue that we're used to seeing. But when you watch, say, a short film that's been Oscar nominated or BAFTA nominated or is a high-end short, you'll find that the dialogue is very different, and it's kind of like maybe biting dialogue that you see in like Shameless or those kind of TV shows. So it's good then to research and watch how characters interact and what they say through like award-winning kind of films, and how their communication is different and what kind of words they say to each other. It's kind of like researching first, and watching and learning how they talk, because that can then make you realize how those communities can express themselves to each other. And that's what I find is really useful, because you'll find that with films that are more formulaic, it's very predictable, boring dialogue that we've already heard before. It's something that people do say to each other quite all the time. But when it's something that's more, outside the box and a little bit more edgy and risky, that's what they're looking for. So it's just making these characters be really bold and stand out and have like aggressive visions, and not be, say, the norm or hiding away as in the cliched mold. That makes sense.
Dr. Rebecca, I have one question, because we work together. I've known you for some time. Culture plays a lot of part when we write, as when you write an African script and so on and so forth. What advice would you give some of the people that will be listening? How can they avoid, because we kind of wordy, for us, cliche is our motto, so how can we work around that so we can be selected in film festivals?
A culture is a big thing, you're right. I think it's important to really remain true to your culture in some aspects of the story so that you don't deviate. But it all boils down to how the story is taking a risk within that culture. So it steps outside the box, and it doesn't do what we'd expect to see in that culture, but it just takes a bit more of a risk and has characters that are well-rounded and developed to do that. A really good book, actually, it's quite a random book, but it's an academic book, but it really helps a lot in terms of creating characters for each kind of culture and community. It's by Richard Dyer, called Stars. And it talks a lot about celebrities, but it talks also about how they create characters that are really standing out characters, and also helps a little bit in terms of directing a film. But it's a really good book, and it's one of the biggest academic books, but it's not too heavy. It's not like a heavy academic book that's really dry. It's a very interesting, useful book for all filmmakers. I'll type it in actually in the chat thing.
Yeah, okay, do that. I was trying to type. Yeah, please.
Richard Dyer, called Stars. It's available everywhere. But that he really gives good tips in terms of how actors create that character, but also what they need to work with. So they're very good in terms of really nailing down exactly what festivals look for, also what a film needs to have in it generally. So he's really good to read that book, Stars. It's quite easy to remember, Stars. That would be what I recommend.
Well, thank you very, very much indeed. And obviously there are different festivals for different types of films as well, short films, correct?
Correct. So there are short film focused festivals which celebrate all types of filmmaking. The more what we call general festivals are those which have short film programs, but they also show feature films. And there are script competitions, and festivals do have best screenplay awards as well for those that want to get their screenplay out there. So do think of those as well. There aren't a huge amount compared to, say, like a live film festival with finished films, but they do exist. So they're always useful to get your script more attraction and a bit more credibility with those types of festivals and those awards you might win. But yes, there are.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anybody else has any more questions? Because Dr. Rebecca is so busy, so we're quite pleased that we've got her here for to talk to us all the way from Mexico. I have to put that in. Sorry, it sounds so exciting, So thank you very much indeed. I mean, you can stay on with us. Somebody probably has a question, or maybe Tony, we could probably have a quick break after this.
No, it's fine. Yeah, just to say, Rebecca's in Mexico, you're in Geneva, and I'm in Forest Gate. So there is a slight difference. And obviously, Rebecca, I'd love to join you in Mexico or wherever you are. You're all over the place. But no, I always find you so insightful, and obviously such experience of short films, which is great. My next target this year or certainly next year is around converting some of my short stories into short films yet to do. Can I just ask you another quick question? I know you're talking. are people, because obviously you hear rumors of people filming their short films on iPhones and on iPads, and because there's always this thing about having the right kit to do short films, and it can be as expensive as you like, can also be as cheap as you like. Are you finding that young people are having success, which I hope is the answer is yes, in terms of doing short films on their iPads and using, getting beyond that sort of mystique of it, us turning these things into really sort of fine arts, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. No, I am finding that actually. There are actually now, recently there have been a surge of festivals which are dedicated to mobile films and making films on mobile phone.
Wow.
The best one is the Dublin Smartphone Festival. He's brilliant. I mean, he's a great guy, and also his festival is really, really good. And there's amazing films that you see that are made on iPhone. I've Tangerine, a brilliant feature film, was made on iPhone. And that got very good commercial success. But there's quite an uptake because people have realized that since phones get more advanced, like the iPhone 12 now, it's really like, like a camera quality, and you can make really good videos on there. So looking good, you can make features on there as well as shorts. So there is a rise in it because people have used that a lot during the pandemic, to do what they can in the best possible way. Like with the Flimsy TV show I mentioned, that's all iPhone. I've got a feature film that I work on, which is iPhone, made on iPhone 6. And that looks really good, actually. You wouldn't have thought it would be an iPhone phone. It would be like, just a low budget indie movie, but it's not. So there's a rise, there's a market there, and it'll just get growing. That will keep thriving because phones keep advancing.
Thank you. No, it's really useful, that. Absolutely.
And also, I forgot to mention that Dr. Rebecca has also written a book, and it's on Amazon. You've written 2 books, actually. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about it? Now, before you do, I want to say to you that our contact details also on the chat. You can grab that. She's got Instagram information on there, and you can reach her as well if you want. I will probably put your email info@filmfestival.doctor.
Yeah, I'll put that on there too. Happy to have my email as well. If you message me on Instagram, I'll get back to you on that as well, and please follow. There's lots of tips I give quite a few days a week, and also post and engagement of our news, our clients, etc., so on and so forth. Yes, absolutely. So I have my book. So actually I do have, in terms of film festivals, I have an ebook which is called Priorities for Film Festival Exposure, which helps you create your strategy, which is a nice ebook for like £2.60, I think it is. And also there's an audio book as well to really help you create a very streamlined and focused ultimate festival strategy, which includes lots of other things you might not have thought of. And my book was published in October, which isn't so much about festivals. It's more about how I work and how to work with me, but also how I found what I am born to do. The book's called Born to Do It, which is doing what I do now, working in the film industry, doing my film festival doctor business. And it also teaches you how to start up your first company using spiritual techniques and business practices that you should integrate into your infrastructure.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Any more questions before she goes? She's never available, so utilize her time, utilize her time. If no more questions, we're going to take a break. Should we take a break or should we continue, Tony?
I'm quite happy to continue if you like. What people feel. Do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Does anybody want to take a break? Oh, everybody, thank you very much, Dr. Rebecca, so she says. Does anybody want to take a break or should we just carry on because of time? But okay.
I'm fine either way.
Oh, continue, everybody. Okay, either way. Let's just continue. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Rebecca. Thank you.
Thanks.
Speak again soon.
Bye.
Marvelous. That was a really useful session, wasn't it, Rose?
Yes, yes, it was really informative, and you can reach her as well. So let's carry on then. But listen, if anybody wants to take a break, please mute yourself and take a break. Have your camera on rather than your video on, and come back to us. But in the meantime, we'll carry on, Tony, because of time. Yeah. Yeah. No. Tony, I know you're the speaker. So if you get tired and you want to take a break, just let us know. Yeah.
No, I'm quite happy to go on till 8 o'clock this evening. I don't think anyone would want to join me. I can carry on all day, but those that know me. But no, I found that really useful because obviously what we've covered then, publishing in terms of how to get your book out there. Dr. Rebecca is absolute short film. She's the best in the business. I think that's fair to say. There's no doubt about that. And obviously, we've known her for a while, which is great. I just want to talk about, because I tend to specialize in short stories, and I've mentioned flash fiction before. So the world of the short films is of interest to me. And just a little description about sort of short stories, really. And it's a sort of undervalued art, really, in terms of the short story. But something around flash fiction is very much of its time, because I think with social media and with, you know, we've been brought up just looking at adverts and short, sharp messaging. And I try to capture images and short, you know, short instances. And I'm going to talk more about that in terms of my particular venture, same titles, different continents, in a moment. But it's really useful to get, you know, Dr. Rebecca talking about short films. But so what we've done publishing, we've got short films. We're going to talk about theatre now. And obviously, I think theatre's probably, you know, one of my first loves, really. I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour around the world of theatre, because I think often it can be a bit of a minefield, understanding who does what and why. And just to give a little bit of my background, as I said, I was really lucky as a student, and it's in a gap year as well. I sort of worked part-time in a few theatres, the National and at Hampstead Theatre as well. Being a North London boy, I was down there quite a lot. So I saw firsthand how things sort of worked. And as a sort of budding writer, and I love the idea of writing plays as well, and to see Harold Pinter, who is my idol, close up was absolutely fantastic. So theatre I became interested in while at university. I had some plays performed in university drama department, got a little bit of the bug there. Didn't do anything for a long period of time. And then over a number of years, I have worked at different theatres, had a few performances here and there. So what I'm going to do is break theatre down, because it's the key roles in theatre. You've got your theatre producer, you've got your theatre director, you've got your lowly writer like me, and you've got your actors and actresses. And well, Rhoda and I can probably do a sort of double act around the world of theatre production, because I didn't quite get this when I was younger. I get it now. The role of the theatre producer is crucial to making things happen, but they're not always linked into the art, as it were. The theatre producer puts the play on, they arrange the contracts, they arrange the venue, they arrange the behind the scenes mechanics that puts that piece of work in action. Rhoda Wilson is one of the best film producers I know, and she has these qualities in abundance in terms of being able to organize and put these things together. Not a role. I've done theatre production, and it's not really for me. I do it because I have to half the time, but it's a very detailed work. You're sorting out the financial management. And if anyone's interested in theatre production, and it is that behind the scenes, pulling everything together, there are theatre production courses out there. There are different BAs and MAs that you can do. Different sites in Southend, would you believe it, and Essex, that specialise in theatre production. But that theatre producer is crucial in terms of getting that work to the stage or on screen. And it's that behind the scenes thing around business management, communication, working with the writer, working with the theatre director, and working with the actors and actresses to make it happen. Just a few examples, you know, and footy fans will find this of interest. I think the Everton chairman, Bill Kenwright, is a theatre producer. Now, he doesn't necessarily need to know anything really about art or have any interest in art whatsoever, but he does produce theatre. So he actually, and a lot of that may well be sponsoring and putting some money in to support the play and get it on, support the actors, support the writers. But he's a well-known theatre producer. Like Cameron McIntosh is a well-known theatre producer who gets that work on. I, in my different dabblings with the theatre over the years, have had to sort of adopt that role. Sometimes I have worked with theatre producers as well, but certainly working in fringe theatre, I've actually done that role as well. And as I say, it's an interesting field, and you can be really arty, and you can also work with the director and the writers, but it can be a separate function. But to have a good theatre or film producer is absolutely crucial. And the fact that Rhoda managed to produce a film during lockdown was absolutely amazing. And given the conversations we had, Rhoda, about the mechanics of getting it to happen, sort of rang bells. But you did a magnificent job doing that. So theatre production is what it is, and it's very different from the director's role, the theatre director. And having seen directors up large and directed plays myself, if you think about the producer getting the play to the stage, the actual director is around translating that work to the audience, working with the actors and actresses and the writer, and getting that piece of work absolutely right and perfect on stage. I think that the role of a theatre director is very, very difficult and very complex and needs real skills, because if you're working with probably a writer like me or other writers who may be really believing in everything they've written is sacrosanct and needs to be played in a certain way, and the characters need to do this and do that, for a theatre director, that can be maybe quite easy. You're going to follow my lead, or you may say, well, actually, I want a bit more flexibility to work with the actors and actresses and give them a bit of a role to see how they can develop what you've written. And as I say, I've worked with some, I've seen some big names in action over the years. And for those that love theatre, and they may know Harold Pinter, and obviously Mike Leigh is another writer, famous film director as well, and theatre, but they work very, very differently. And just to give an example of how things work, if you're working on a Harold Pinter play and you're a director or an actor, and if you veer outside of what he's written, you're probably not going to stay too long in that role, because he's very much a believer that what I've written it in a certain way. That's the way I'd like it to be performed. And a director has to understand that and get that. And for a lot of directors and actors, actually think, well, fine, I know I'm doing Pinter, I know I'm doing a certain dramatist's work, that's the way it is. Mike Leigh, as a director, is incredibly different. He will actually have a few generic ideas, sometimes scenes in mind, a general view. But what he'll say if he's directing himself is maybe to the actors and actresses, right, scene one is you've had some incredibly bad news. This is the general situation. I'd like you to come together in the room. You're coming back from work, you're doing whatever you're doing. Let's see how it goes. And he'll improvise, and it's impromptu, and it's got a bit of a life to it, and he'll build it like that. And for a director, different skills, because if you've just got a writer that's very clear, I just want it played like this, you can actually work in a very different way. If you've got that sort of challenge from a writer to say, right, you've got real flexibility within this, and you can work with the actors and actresses to really interpret it, that's also, as I say, a different challenge. I can talk from personal experience of my most recent experience in the theatre, 2 monologues put on, female monologues, interesting. And I didn't want to direct myself, because I don't like directing my own things, or directing full stop, because I find it's difficult working with actors and actresses, but if you're a writer, you're so sort of set on your own way. So I managed to find, via one of my mentees, a wonderful young American director, Holly Caselda, who's actually still here in the UK. She was doing a master's degree in directing, and I said to her, right, I give you carte blanche, you actually go and direct these pieces in any way that you see fit. And what was interesting was, one of the pieces, the actress had a real view on how she could maybe reshape it and retweak it, and I said, I'm fine with you to go with that flow. So Holly worked with her in terms of reshaping things. I was quite happy, and it improved it. It made it a load better and more interesting, and that was really, really good. The other piece, the actress did it verbatim, the way I wrote it, because she was actually thought, well, actually, I just like the way it's been written. It's got a shape to it. It's got a musicality to it. You're aiming for something that has that shape and structure. And so for Holly and the actress, that was fairly straightforward to say, well, actually, let's play it as it is. Obviously, you get certain different traits coming out, but the first play was radically different than the second. So it just shows that the world of the director is really, really different, really, really interesting, and can sort of challenge you in different ways. And as I say, having had experience of that, it's a great world to be in. You can be a writer director. Some people combine all three, which is really ambitious and really, really difficult to do. So in terms of directing, yeah, once again, there are courses. You can find them online if people want to go into theatre direction. The best way is to volunteer with theatre companies and get your name into places like the Theatre Royal, which is down the road from me in Mexico. No, in Forest Gate. I'm not in Mexico, I'm in Forest Gate. But the Theatre Royal or the Bush or the Almedia or whatever, and do some, you know, get in there and volunteer to do some help support work with some directors, etc. Maybe doing some studying at the same time. But there is a big distinction between theatre production and theatre direction. So I just wanted to make that piece clear. And then you've got obviously the writer, you know, that dramatist. And what I'm going to talk about now, hopefully, maybe if you have got your play in a locked drawer somewhere that you've written years ago and you're thinking, well, actually, I'd like to get my piece of work out to the world. How do I do that? Then I'll talk about that. There are ways and means of doing that. I've worked with different theatre companies before, sent my work through. Some are interested, some are not. Some it may be of the time, sometimes it's not. So you can be, there are sort of theatre writing competitions as well, new writing competitions. You'll find a lot of those online. It's worth considering that. But if you really want to sort of nut and bolts way to do this, and it's a sort of self-publishing theatre version, if you like, is you can get your work on at a fringe theatre or any local theatre fairly easily by approaching, and I've worked with theatres like the Soho Theatre, the Bush before, the Etc Theatre in Camden's a nice little pub theatre, the King's Head in Islington. You'll find a whole load of fringe independent theatres that you can actually hire out at a fairly minimal cost. For instance, the Almedia, the last one, I don't mind sharing these details. We did a 6-night run a year and a half ago for £800. Wow. Now, that's actually not bad. Now, if you actually look at my situation, I was working with a director, 2 actresses in that instance, so there's 4 of us. We agreed to profit share, which I, you know, I think it's only right. I'm not going to have actors and actresses or people I'm working with do things for nothing. It does happen, unfortunately, I'm afraid to say, but doesn't happen with me. If I will profit share. So if you think about it, if you've got 6 nights and in a 50, 60 seater that you're selling at 10, 15 pounds a ticket, you may recoup that back over 2 nights, the first 2 nights, and then the other 4 nights. We made a profit. We did well, and I've never failed to sort of make not huge amounts. I am not in Geneva sitting with Rhoda or in Mexico at the moment because of theatre work in terms of money, but we've done okay. So I think the message is that you really can get your work out there if you know how. And theatres, remember, and especially fringe theatres in London, are especially receptive to writers and putting artists on. The one great thing about it is, yeah, let's say you want to put your play on or your work on, whatever it is, you'll be guaranteed press coverage because the theatre will guarantee that themselves. They're not going to put shows on for the sake of it and just have people ignore them. So they will support you with the publicity on it as well. And it's a great vehicle for getting your work out there. We was in a sad situation really with that run. Our personal circumstances prevented us, but we were offered slots at Edinburgh because of those performances, etc., which was great. And we could have taken both plays there last year, and obviously, well, because of what happened this year, that's another. And I think even this year will be difficult, but certainly in our sights for next year. So it can lead to different things for you. And for an actress or an actor, it's a vehicle for you to showcase your own material, your own talent, You know, you put it in your show reel, and I know both of them have, which is fantastic, and it's paid off for them. So it can really work for you. And to talk about the final end of this, the actors and actresses, if there are any out there as well. And I do really genuinely feel, well, not sorry for actors. It's very difficult to get, if you're in a long running soap opera, or you're in something that's done really, really well, or you're in a big stage play that's done really well, it really can pay off. The vast majority of actors and actresses sadly sort of like struggle to get by, have to do other things half the time. You can be using theatre to be promoting yourself as an actor and actress as well. And you can be actually getting your work out there. You can be working with someone like me, and a number have over the years, and said, well, actually, I like what you've actually written. An example, I worked with a French actress who was actually, well, she spent time over here, but she contacted me and said, I'd like to do one of your plays, A Woman's World. I'd like to do it in Belgium, and I'd like to sort of have it translated and do my own version. So absolutely fine, because it sort of worked for her, and it helped her secure a film role, which I was really pleased about. So it can actually really, really work. So in terms of theatre, it's a wonderful thing to be involved in theatre. You know, each of those roles is fantastic. It can be frustrating. It is hard work, but if your heart's in it and you want it to work, you can make it work. And there are now, because of the dominance of the arts, there are a whole range of courses, even for budding playwrights and dramatists. And when I, all those years ago, there was no notion of maybe schools for this. There was the RADA for actors and actresses and whatever. Now there's a whole range of filmmaking schools and, writing schools and playwrights, which is fantastic. It's taking advantage of all of that support as well. So that's the world of theatre in a nutshell. And I'm quite happy to help. So I'm happy to sort of, conscious of time, I'm happy to take a few questions if people want to ask anything around theatre in particular, or if they want me to move on and talk about some other things.
Tony, the time now is 4:20. So if anybody has questions, could they just give Tony the opportunity to go to the end? I mean, we've got 3 more areas to cover. Okay. Tony, can we do that?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
No, sorry, 3:20, I beg your pardon.
It's 3:20, yeah, I got worried.
4:20 in Geneva.
No problem. Yeah, no, I'm fine. So, okay, yeah, as I've said, if anyone does need help and support, most of you may well know me anyway and can get me on LinkedIn or whatever, but my email details will be there, and my website is there as well, so happy to help. So we've done publishing. We've got a view on, if you want to get your work out there, you can do that. Short films we've done in terms of that. Theatre we've done as well. I just wanted to talk about, the whole notion of working across continents now, and using one example of how it can work for you in terms of networking. LinkedIn, I use quite a lot in terms of working with artists and illustrators, and even in my day job with employers and partners as well. But I've used it a lot with the arts over the years, and I've actually developed a whole range of fantastic contacts with new artists around the world, not just here, which has been amazing to me. And it's interesting because I think, a few points have come through earlier about mentors and about supporters. And I always remember someone telling me, in theatre years ago, and I think it's just, but you need to find a sponsor, you need to find a good mentor, you need to find someone that's going to be a real prompter and prodder all the time to say, what are you up to, and keep you going. And I think LinkedIn, ironically, can work for that. And I'll tell you how it works, because if you actually want to get into short film production, or you want to get into theatre or whatever, and you can find names of companies or people that you're interested in, link into them on LinkedIn. Because I think one of the things that I've found, if people are on LinkedIn, they're on there for a reason. They want to actually do business. It's a professional platform. And I found some brilliant contacts over the years on LinkedIn. So I would encourage you all, if there are particular things you want to do, even if it's not in the arts, if you're looking for employment, I tell people, if you want to work for PwC, link into PwC, link into all of their employers, tell them how wonderful they are, because they all love that. We all love that. I tell Rhoda how wonderful she is because she is, but tell them how wonderful they are, and you want to have 5 minutes, you'd love them to mentor you. We all love that. That is the way to get on LinkedIn in terms of, and people say, oh, well, I love that myself. If someone says, I love what you do. I think it's fantastic what you do. Have you got 5 minutes? Yeah, definitely. It'll be 10 minutes, 15 minutes for me, probably. But I'm quite happy. But people don't get that with LinkedIn. So not only with the arts here, but in life in general. And I'm veering into my branding and my other job really, but LinkedIn is really useful for that. But one example of how it's worked for me, which hopefully you'll all find really useful, is that I linked in with a young Nigerian poetess a couple of years ago, Blessing Jane Nardi, and I was really struck by her work and, you know, and her youth in terms of what she'd already done. She'd self-published a couple of volumes that were, to me, thoroughly unique, absolutely different. I hadn't read anything like it before. So we struck up a really good relationship talking on LinkedIn. And what we decided to, she liked the titles of my short stories. I tend to write very distinctive, different titles. As those of you that read my short stories will think, well, yeah, they are different, distinct. She liked them. She thought they were really different. So we agreed a process where I would send her the titles of short stories I was going to write or had written without telling her anything about the stories themselves. So she had no idea what they were about. I'll give you an example. I sent her something, Amber on the Beach, which is the short story I've written a long while ago, but it's about a woman who's actually having a breakdown. She's just retired after being in the same job for 30 plus years. Her marriage is crumbling. She doesn't really talk to her children, and she ends up on her last day ordering a table and chair from the office, and she has it delivered to the beach on her first day of retirement. And she sits there on the beach as if she's going to be doing the same job, talking to people in the same way she did for 30 years on the beach, hence Amber on the Beach. And it was that was the story. But Blessing didn't know that. So her story, Amber on the Beach, she saw the diamond, she saw the reflection of the amber, the sort of like the different qualities, because she's a poet, she wouldn't she? But she produced something that's so radically different to what I'd done, which was beautiful. And that was the whole point of it, was the interpretation of it was great. So Blessing and I did more of these, with a whole volume of these. And on the other hand, I was also looking for an illustrator. And because my short stories have a very distinctive feel, a 19th century Victorian punch cartoon type feel. And I always loved those punch cartoons that went with the story. So I couldn't find an illustrator on LinkedIn that I liked. I found ones that wanted to charge me a whole load of money for what I wanted to do. And I didn't think and couldn't present anything to me of any worth. So one of my mentees, Priya, who's been fantastic, I hope she's on the call somewhere, but she supported me not only to find Holly Caselda as a director, but she found me Bodie Stanley. And Bodie is a wonderful illustrator who was studying at UEL. Proud to say, he got his first class degree in illustration. He's in print as well. And we had a discussion. He started doing some illustrations for my short stories, and hopefully the rest is history, because I didn't have to explain anything around those stories at all, and he seemed to get them. And of those that have seen my books and read them, they'll probably agree that his illustrations are better than my short stories in a large number of cases. So what we had then was same titles, different continents. We had the notion of Blessing's poems, my short stories. Bodhi's Australian but lives here. Wow. So you've got this wild mix going on of radically different things, which hopefully I think people have found initially quite confusing in a way, but as an artistic experience, it sort of worked really well. And so it's just an example of you're not alone when you're looking to do these things. You can reach out to people. And ironically, Rhoda and I, before lockdown, you may remember this, right? We were out theatre hunting one night. We went to the Almedia, didn't we? And we were looking at doing something which we think is quite novel, a piece of sort of like, I'm not sure it would be described as Anglo-Nigerian theatre, but it would be in a way something a bit different, and with a different twist in terms of a sort of an adaptation of one of my plays, but in a Nigerian setting, that we still have aspirations to get out there one day. But it just shows you the potential of what you can be doing, and what you need, and if your mindset is around collaboration as well, and getting those mentors and supporters, which might actually support a number of you thinking, well, I've heard a large number of things today which I think, I can really use that, but I could also maybe use with some more practical help from some specialists, and we all need that help and support. So reach out and search for those people and see if you can make those links.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Rhoda, on that one? You want me to?
Yeah. Then we've got plans for the future, beyond, and then the tips for success. That is also important. Then we can give people the opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, no problem. I was just going to make plans for the future for me. And once again, it's really interesting. We had this conversation again about publishing. I'm actually in conversations with publishers at the moment, hybrid publishers, so distinguish between the two. I'm waiting for the main publishers to come back, because hybrid publishers will come back very, very quickly with an offer if they like your work, because they want to keep you, and obviously they want your investment. So I'm in the middle of actually discussions with I've had some nice offers, which is nice, from the hybrid publishers, about a novella that it's my lockdown novel, which is nice. My lockdown novella that I wrote during the period, and I've just put out there. So that's happening at the moment. And if a big publisher doesn't come back, I may well take up on that offer. So I would encourage you to be, as I say, thinking about your own space. If you have got stuff you want to be putting out there, think about publishing in the different forms. And I've got a couple of stage plays that are ready to go, that we're hoping that, as I say, it won't be this year, probably next year, that we will get out there. And I've got another collection of short stories to get out there as well. Plus, as I say, A Day in the Sun, which is our sort of a piece that Rhoda and I actually got as far as doing auditions for before, things sort of went west, as it were, over the past year or so. So there's a load of things going on for me at the moment. And as I say, part of this journey is you'll know me, I'm quite happy to help support in any way. A lot of my work is also around mentoring young writers, artists, anyone really that needs help and support. I support a number of graduates that need help and support, either finding the right career for themselves or finding the right vehicle. And I'm always interested in, and I have in the past looked at, and even given what I've said about production, I'm always happy to consider working with some really young, dynamic writers that really want to get their work out there. And just one thing I will say, and talking about Nigeria, Africa at the moment, sad to hear yesterday, I think there were more sort of young girls kidnapped in Nigeria yesterday, Boko Haram, whatever. It's a horrendous situation out there in different parts of the world as well. But I'm also working with a young guy in Nigeria who's actually blogging almost every day on the situation there, and how dark and difficult it can be, and how frightening it is to even go into the city centre and sort of like go in for food, and for fear of being attacked by the police. And we had the SARS issues recently as well. But I think he's got a really evocative story of how things have moved, and and so I'm going to be putting together for him his blogs in one sort of piece, which obviously acts as a narrative to what's going on. And it just shows it's a powerful piece of work. But certainly he would never have conceived of doing that. And he found me on LinkedIn, given that I published a book with Blessing. And part of that, he was saying that I'm conscious you've supported a fellow Nigerian with this, and I'd really like to get your views on what I've written. And I was blown away by the tons of stuff and how powerful it was. And I don't think he realized, put together, it's a really powerful package. So we're working on something that I will hopefully get published for him sometime this year as well. So yeah, the plans for the year, there's tons of stuff going on. We have to see how the world evolves in terms of lockdown, but there's a load going on. But what I'll do now, talk about tips for success, really, based on all of that. Small steps first. Don't try to do too much too soon, and be very focused on what you want to do and why you want to do it. And I think I started off talking about that, and especially in terms of your writing, in terms of your work. You know, what are you looking to do, and why are you looking to do it, and do you think there is a market there for it? So that's the first thing. And I think in terms of fear of failure, again, we've discussed earlier as well, and I think a load of people, we all suffer that, no matter who we are. We all sometimes have that sort of doubt about what we're doing and how things are working, and so it's very hard to overcome. But if you know that everyone has gone through that, and the example of J.K. Rowling, who was actually rejected at least 15 times by different publishers, because, and it was bizarre reason why, is because the main publishing houses couldn't work out where the book sat. Was it a children's book? Was it a bit of science fiction? Was it a sort of romance book? Where and they didn't essentially want to take a risk. Obviously someone did in the end, and it paid off. But it is about that focus as well. And in terms of, you know, not, people aren't going to like everything that you do. And I think, you know, it's what Rhoda was saying about being, you know, really tenacious, and about being a bit hard, and being confident in yourself, and actually just having the confidence to think it's your version of the world, whatever you come up with in terms of your story. I've had people that really like and love my short stories. I've had people that have said, why is it so short? I really liked it, but why didn't you do it into it? Which sort of defeats the whole purpose of it being a short story. But hey, you know, but people will have opinions, and all sorts of opinions about things, and that's absolutely fine. Not everyone will like what you do, but you need to sort of be true to yourself, which is the next one. You know, really sort of focusing on what you want to do and how you want to do it. Some people are very, very focused on, you know, producing a bestseller. They want to model themselves on different people, on different pieces of work, and that's absolutely fine. Some people are very, very keen on really showing their own artistic identity and doing things in their own way. And I think that's really useful. Funny, I was watching some with Michaela Cole the other day, and I May Destroy You, yeah. Which I think Michaela, I think she's a genius, and I think that's a work of art. I May Destroy You, I think, and she's a force to be reckoned with. And it's been shunned in the recent awards festivals I was reading for some bizarre reason, because it's so much better than everything else. But they were talking to her about writing and her vision, and most people don't realize, but Chewing Gum, her first TV show.
Chewing Gum, yeah.
Chewing Gum was great.
I follow her. I really like her. I do follow her on Twitter.
Oh, no. She's brilliant. Yeah, she's always great. But Chewing Gum started as a short one-woman play in a small theatre, and that then sort of turned into the TV show it is. But she really cracked me up when she was talking. She was talking about writing and talking about, you know, how she gets on with ideas, and she was saying some great things about obviously letting, you know, that page, and we all have that. I have that, Rhoda will have that. Some days you're going to sit down and write and you have a fear of starting, or you actually think, well, and she just said, which is something that I would say as well, you just need to write. You need to sort of tackle that fear, start writing. For the first couple of minutes, it may look rubbish, it may feel rubbish, it may sound rubbish, but if you keep on writing, and it will evolve as best it can, and sometimes it'll work out wonderfully well and go in a totally different direction as sometimes. But she was interested about, but they asked her, they said, well, what was the biggest advice you'd give to someone that you actually took in terms of learning how you do what you do? She said, well, I just Googled it, really. And I just said, how do I write a successful TV show? or a successful play, and I Googled all the stuff and I nicked all of the ideas as best I can. I put them down in a format that it made sense to me. And then I just went with my own version of what other people said. And I think, you know, that you can't go wrong if you sort of do that. Find out what different approaches are, and then you need to break it down into what works for you, because writers and producers and directors work in a very, very different way. So I'm conscious of time, Rhoda. I'm just happy to sort of take any questions or any other observations.
Okay. Thanks very much, Tony. That is really appreciated. I've got a few questions myself, but I will throw it to the floor first. And I know, Chichi, you have a question. So if you have a question, unmute yourself and then ask the question.
Hi, thank you. So my question is more around Tony's kind of experience in dealing with the same type of rejections, but if there's any way you can give a specific story, you don't have to give so much information, but around maybe how you tried to publish your first short story, and maybe specifically what was rejected and why, and how you dealt with it and how you eventually got it published, if just to understand that a bit more.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. And hi, Chi-Chi. And I'll give you a great example of this. I did approach a couple of major publishing houses with probably naively, a number of years ago, with a couple of my short stories, and they're all very polite and they will actually respond. And I have a couple of responses still there, but some of them did respond and said, well, actually, this seems to be quite different and novel, what you're trying to do here, but why don't you just turn them into longer stories? Because we can't see a sort of market for this. And this was before the emergence of flash fiction, and which is sort of a like genre now. But yeah, so I did get some negative. It wasn't negative, it was positive in a negative way, if that makes sense. It was saying, well, actually, we can see what you're trying to do, but it's not for us. And often, you know, you could take that and think, oh my God, you know, it's you won't get rejections saying, we think this is absolute rubbish, you're wasting your time, why don't you go and hide somewhere? You're not going to get that. You will get a realistic view from them. And I have had that certainly with my first short story, saying, well, actually, we don't think there's, you know, we can market this and sell this in the marketplace. We understand and get what you're doing, but hey ho. So I took that not literally to heart. You live and learn. And then I had to explore other options. And initially I went for, without really knowing too much about hybrid publishing, I went into self-publishing. So I've sort of like learned my way around self-publishing because I was determined to get them out in one way or another, because I believed in them. And as I say, the beauty of self-publishing, Chi-Chi, is that you are in control of what you do. And I'm a fair number. I'm sort of and I'm quite happy to be a cult writer of some description, with a little following of people that sort of get what I do at the moment, in the belief that, you know, someday vast numbers of people will understand and try what I'm doing. But yeah, so that's an example of where I had that rejection, and I thought, well, actually, you have to sort of then get into the mindset, as Rhoda and I were talking about earlier, about being tenacious, thinking, well, I believe in what I'm doing. It's my vision of the world. If you don't buy into it, that's fair enough. And as a publishing house, I'd rather, I don't want to write another, you know, Harry Potter's already written. I'm not interested. I don't want to write a cookbook. I don't want to write things that you think will sell. I want to do what I want to do. And that's how I had to adopt that tone. Ultimately, then I sort of come back the other way, with there has been interest in some of the short stories and the recent ones I put through, and certainly by hybrid publishers who are willing to take a risk on them now, which potentially may not have, but they will also, because they're quite clever, check your status on different social media outlets. They'll check your sales if they possibly can, if you are self-publishing, your profile, the reviews of your books as well. So it, you know, it goes hand in hand. Did that answer your question, Chi-Chi?
Yes, it did. Thank you. It did. It's nice to know that they're not like horrible as well when rejecting. I wouldn't have thought that.
No, they're not. Because remember, these people also know it's only critics that can be horrible, Chi-Chi, and that's a separate conversation. Theatre critics can be especially horrible, because large numbers of theatre critics, I really shouldn't say this, but I will, really are failed artists in one way or another. I would argue failed writers in one way or another as well, who often can be very vindictive to the point of being personal about things, which you have to get used to, and have to. So once you understand that, the rationale, that sort of makes you think, well, actually, I don't really care. But I've not really had really negative reviews on theatre stuff either. There's been some really nice positive things, but yeah, you're going to get the odd one that will actually be quite difficult, and but publishing companies no, they'll just tell you quite rightly, we don't think we can sell this, and we get where you're going with it, it's a niche market or whatever, but they'll tell you that.
I've got a few questions, Tony.
Yeah.
One of them is, I've got my own question, but
Oh.
one is, I don't think you explained what a short film. Did you explain what the difference between short story writer and a novella? I don't think.
No, okay, no, and I'm happy to cover that, because I think the novella is sort of fallen out of style, really. You've got your full-length novel, which clearly is there. Ironically, I think the full-length novel is sort of not a thing of the past, but you've got your Tolstoys, you've got your Dickens, and you've got your Oliver Twists, and you've got your large, big Harry Potter books and whatever. Then at the other extreme, you've got your short stories and your flash fiction that I'm talking about, that is very much in vogue, hopefully at the moment, given that our attention span isn't what it was, and there's so many other things going on. There's a market for it. Now, the novella is essentially a cross between the two. So a novella is a small novel that can be anything from 50 to 100 pages. It's usually around that length. So it doesn't fit the short story, but it's a sort of, as I say, a novelette. But a novella sort of fits that. And there is a market for that as well. There's a particular market for a compendium of novellas. So the idea is, if you've written, 2 or 3 sort of very longish short stories that are novellas, you can have a compendium of the 3 of them together. So yeah, it just sits between the two, Rhoda.
Somebody earlier on asked a question about, can you mention any Christian books? Because you mentioned that some of the stories, publishers are looking for Christian texts and things like that. Do you know any Christian author that you could maybe mention?
Oh, I tell you what, not really. I'd have to confess, I don't read a huge amount of religious or inspirational. I tend to read more of the self-help type books, the Anthony Robbins type books, and the Stephen Covey books, the 7 Traits of Successful People, that sort of stuff. But no, there are a large number of religious types of writers out there. But I think you'd probably need to wiki or Google that, and depending on what your preferences are. But there's a large number of Catholic writing out there, and there's obviously a lot of Bible literature out there, or commentary out there as well. So it really does vary, and a lot of it is culturally specific as well, isn't it? We know that, and so yeah. But I don't. It's not something I must confess to sort of reading, so I can't. But there are, as I say, certain you can search, you can do a Google search for particular writer, but it just sells. But especially in America, because where there's huge push, certainly around the Bible Belt in the Deep South, there's a huge appetite for religious literature and sort of salvationist evangelical type literature. And also, ironically, which obviously seems to sit, America is huge for the self-help, motivational, empowerment type work as well. So they sit alongside each other, but it's a huge market there to explore. So if you do see that my book comes out with a Christian title, you'll know that I've decided to jump on and look at a bestseller.
Make the money.
yeah. The best types of being a Christian type thing. But yeah, but there's huge potential there for anyone that wants to get into that field. And a lot of people actually quite rightly take it very seriously. And given lockdown and given the problems that people have endured, people quite, faith is an important thing for people. So I would see it getting even bigger.
Okay, I've got a question here, but I think Dr. Rebecca has gone. The person says, I would like to know why there's less demand for makeup and hair stylists in short film, unlike the full movies. But maybe you could talk about the theater. Is there demand for makeup artists on the stage as it is on films?
Yeah, I think once again, that is always allied to the budget that's available for the short film or the movie. You will know, Rhoda, from your experience in terms of film, you know, if that's factored into the budget, and it will be, there will be a big demand for makeup support. And in theatre, absolutely, it's a key part. But once again, there is a demand. It depends how it's factored into the budget. And with short films, it's usually kept very much to a minimum. As Rebecca was explaining, which is fascinating to me, is the idea that you can just take your iPhone 12 and have 2 or 3 people and just make your own short film, and and have a realistic, raw touch to it without it being touched up is fascinating. But then that will impact on the need for those services as well. But yeah, there's always a need for makeup. Certainly within theatre, there are departments, and there are careers in there. But yeah, it depends on the budget. It depends on the type of play, type of theatrical production. If it's in a main theatre, a West End theatre, absolutely a big need, and they will have separate departments within each theatre. If it's in a fringe theatre, no, people will make do with what they may buy it in. They may have people do it. It works differently, really does.
One last question. Yeah, you talked about the hybrid publishing.
Yeah.
And but what is the payment structure like, in terms of you getting monies from publishers, either Kindle, the hybrid, or from generally publishers of your work?
Right. Okay. In terms of a main publisher, they will actually give you a publishing contract, and the contract will specify what your royalties will be. Now, if you're with a main publisher, it could be as low as maybe 20%. Now, remember, with a big publisher, you may well sell absolutely huge amounts, and you may well make a load of money. So that 20% could equate to a large amount of money. It may not. But royalties work in the way that most payment systems work. It may well be a monthly payment arrangement where the royalties will come through. Once those books start selling, then obviously you will start seeing royalty payments come through on that rate that you've agreed with them. And
so
with
roughly how much it is? Roughly how much are the rates? Roughly £2, £1, roughly.
Well, it depends on the book price.
Okay.
So it's 20% of what that book price would be. Okay. And if you think about hybrid publishing, once again, it's around 50% if they're going halfway in house with you. So if your book is at £10.99, at 50%, you're getting half of that, the £5, whatever it is, and if it's 20%, it's the £2 of the £10. It really does vary. But remember, you're talking about different volumes in terms of major publishing houses. If they take your book on, they're expecting to sell in bulk, so you will make money. It will vary, the amounts will vary, but you'll make money. Hybrid publishing, 50% of each. If they're doing their job well in terms of their PR and marketing, and you've got a good product to sell that's in the market, you'll get 50% of it. Self-publishing is the one where, you see, once again, self-publishing, you can take 80%, up to 80% of the royalties, but you don't have the PR machine behind you to sell it. So you can get more money by self-publishing your book, and you'll get more of the percentage for each book you sell. But if you don't have the publishing company behind you, or this is why I said about self-publishing, if you actually do your own marketing and advertising yourself, or you have someone that's a practitioner that you might want to invest some money in that can get your book publicized for you, then that may well be worth the investment for £1,000 or £2,000 to actually do that, to promote your book properly by someone that knows what they're doing. Because ultimately that's what the big publishing houses will do, by their prestige, reputation, marketplace. Anyone, it's interesting. One of my favorites is Morrissey, singer for the Smiths years ago. A great singer. I love the Smiths, love Morrissey, but he wanted his book autobiography published. Now, Morrissey is a bookworm. He knows his books. He insisted he wanted it published by Penguin, who are a big publishing company. And he got it published by Penguin because clearly for him, he is a big name. He'll sell thousands and thousands of copies, which he has done. So he did have a publishing contract with Penguin. Now, his autobiography sold because it was about him, about his experience and whatever. And he had a contract with, when he wrote a novel with them, that didn't sell as well because people just didn't like the novel. But it just shows you that it depends where you are in the marketplace in terms of, you know, and not everyone's going to have the profile of a Morrissey to be able to go to a big publishing house and say, here I am, I've got my book ready, I want you to publish it for me. And that's how it works. So it really does vary. But yeah, that's the beauty of self-publishing. I love it, but you need to work really hard to make money from self-publishing. But once again, it gets back to that original thing about what are you writing for? You know, what are you wanting to do? Do you want the word out to people? That's great. And you just want to get that out. Or if you're looking at a bestseller, Harry Potter, then, you know, you've maybe got to think of a different route in.
Okay, we got two more questions. One of them is copyright. How do you protect your work?
Well, obviously, if you're actually with a major publishing company, then you don't have an issue around copyright because they will copyright the work with you. There is a process on self-publishing that obviously you can copyright your own work, your own books, your short stories yourself and signified that. But part of the actual process of self-publishing will show you how to do that. So once you've actually published, you can sort of copyright your own work yourself. And I say, if you've got a major company to represent you or a hybrid pub, they will sort all of that stuff out for you. And obviously, once your work is out there in the world anyway, you know, you can do that via self-publishing as well. So I get the question because it is a concern, but there's a part of the process where they'll actually show you how to do that to copyright your own work. Okay. Protect it.
And to protect your name, can you write pseudonym? Can you write in a different name?
Nom de plume, yeah. You know, it's J.K. Rowling, when she actually was writing the Cormoran Shrike novels, no one knew it was her. She was Robert Galbraith. She wrote under a pseudonym. So Robert Galbraith is J.K. Rowling writing those Strike novels, which are very good, actually. I prefer them to the Harry Potter books. But yes, you can. You can use any name that you like if it's not already in use. And some people want to do that because if you are if you are called J.K. Rowling, you may want to use a different name to differentiate yourself between the original, J.K. Rowling. I wanted to publish as Tony Hyland, and I did. And there are a couple of other Tony Hylands that write. We don't get confused because they're different types of books. But yes, you can. It's a long answer to a simple question. You can use a nom de plume, as they call, and do it yourself.
But what if you want to go for interviews to promote the book? How would you? And you don't want people.
Well, no, because if you're writing and publishing in that name, that's the name that they'll use. The spy writer John le Carrier, that's not his real name.
Oh, really?
But everyone knows him as John le Carrier. Yeah, it's something mundane that I can't remember, but that's not his real name. Large numbers of writers have very, very different or mundane real names and just changed them. Yeah, you can do that, and some writers actually write in different genres under different names.
Okay, one last question
Yep.
From Chichi. She wants to know if there's been a situation where a publisher has stolen ideas before they sign the contract.
I tell you what, that's a really good. I was always worried about that because being a writer, you think, well, actually, because I think I've got some great ideas, are they going to nick them? But it hasn't happened to me. So I can only say, you know, I've not sent people work and then found it's resurfaced somewhere else by someone else or be reworded. I have heard of instances where it's happened in the past, but not to a huge extent. Most publishers, when you send them the work, they will write back and say, no, you have our word, you know, we have got this, and we will actually, even if we reject your work, we will actually send you the copy back, or we will destroy that copy. So they will make that commitment to you there and then. But I would always, and I always do, keep a date of when you have sent something to someone, and the time, and the copy of the email, and everything that you've done, just to protect yourself. Because I did worry about it. It hasn't happened to me, but you know, I've heard of people who are thinking, well, certainly in theatre it seems to work sometimes, where people have had scripts or, you know, sent bits through for theatre writing things or to theatre companies, and there's been a few issues about sometimes that piece of work has been sort of resurfaced as something else. But you know, I don't hear of it happening all the time, so it's not a regular thing. But protect yourself by just making sure you keep copies of everything you send, and when you send it, so you've got that.
Okay, I know I said it was the last question, but we've got a couple of minutes. So Tony, I want to say thank you very much indeed. But before people go though, do you have any questions? I've got Tony's contact details here actually at the end. So if you do want to reach out to him, voila.
Yeah, email tony.hyland@hotmail.co.uk is fine. My website as well, you can contact me on there as well. And I have got, hopefully, I've got blogs on there as well that some of you may find of interest relating to some of the things I've discussed today. And I'm always happy to help and support in any way, especially if you are a bit nervous about getting your work out there, a bit nervous about approaching those publishing companies. And it's always good to have someone, you know, to sort of spur you on or support you and show that it can happen. You know, you can make this happen if you want it to happen for you. There's ways and means of doing it. So I'm happy to help in any way and continue the conversation via that way, if you like.
Okay, so any more questions before we, I mean, we're going to stay on, Tony and myself are going to stay on. So, but all I wanted to say is thank you very much indeed to everybody that joined. Your time and presence is really appreciated. And I've got some comments here from the chat. Good event. Really appreciated Dr. Rebecca. Lots of positive comments. Brilliant session. Thanks a lot. You're all very, very welcome. Tony and myself will stay on for a few minutes. But I want to say this is the end of it, really. And thank you again very much. Really, really appreciate it. And have a fantastic afternoon and a lovely weekend as well. So Tony, you're going to stay on, yeah? Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank
you,
you.
Thanks, guys. Have a nice weekend.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.